Ooh, rain's coming in about 3 hours. Now, I've had all kinds of people in my neighborhood and elsewhere try to tell me how my pressurizer pump system works for my neighborhood. And it's just a simple irrigation ditch and then a drop down assist with a pressure pump just to pull, the water over the hill and keep the pressure high in the sprinklers in the field. But they've, you know, set it up so that there's a switch, pump check regulator, whatever, so that it turns off if it goes above or below certain psi. Now, that means it's always kicking off. Now, I understand that you need a safety protocol. So, like, if the pressure goes above whatever extreme threshold, like 50 psi, or goes for a long period to no psi, to like below 5, then it could eventually have a timer and shut off. And then, of course, for high psi, it would immediately shut off. Just for safety, but that's not how it's been set. And everybody in the neighborhood continually gets convinced by the next people moving in that they know what they're doing. And then it causes infinite problems for the actual farmers who know what the hell they're doing and how to water their crops. Okay, so I just wanted to complain a little about that because I was dealing with it today. Now, you see this shape, kind of like, well, what is it like? It doesn't matter. It's like a pinwheel is what I was going to say. Now we're going to watch this video here for a second. And I'm going to describe how in Elko we discussed all possible advances in science tech.
Interstellar travel may be closer than you think. Scientists have invented a way that could take us to another solar system in a few decades. Right now, star, let's say Proxima Centauri, the closest one, it would take tens of thousands of years. Yep, any spaceship we've built, here's how it works. You build a tiny probe and attach it to...
Okay, this was the initial... It's kind of interesting that this is what's being shown here on the video. This is the initial discussion. Some kid's like, well, you said you flew a kite all the way up into space and were, feeling the solar winds of the ionosphere through the kite string. And that story really intrigued kids because it was a specific polar pattern, specific wind pattern there in Elko, Nevada. And I had infinite string. It was like a joke to see how high I could go. And I just kept reeling it out till the kite was long gone for a half hour, an hour up, going up. So, and of course, it was just a regular box, or not, whatever they call this, rupee kite or whatever shape.
A light sail.
So light sails have been talked about forever. They just have fine enough manufacturing now that it's easy to do. And the right materials extracted, mineral materials and everything, and polymers. So pretty cool, right? So to cut a long story short, this will be accelerated, as they say, if we jump to the point. There's some of the light sail material of their primitive version of their first concept. So it would just be this concept that either satellites or the ground of the Earth would be shooting a bunch of particles of lasers.
The photons bounce off it.
Right, all the photon lasers that are scattering as macro waves instead of microwaves. And there's a lot of interesting things we can do with macro waves. Nobody's really been discussing them for some reason. Now, for example, macro waves are a format that can more easier create amplitude into space infinitely with reverberations and feedback loops and etc. So what I'm going to describe here is probably going to blow all your minds and such, and blow other things, blow up everything, blow off, blow out, blow. So the first thought was this shape. And then we thought, well, what if you could capture the actual energy into kinetic motion and store it? Because we had a lot of thoughts. Okay, one was, can you somehow create a small enough reverberation plate with a great enough frequency and just with incoming lasers and a grind wheel of spinning stacked layers. This was one of the shapes we came up with, so that the light would come in. If you think of it three-dimensionally, it would come streaking in and hit areas and be shafted and bent so that it would create torque spin. And then also, though, create center gravity, like density, to the point where you could get enough speed, like it's a little kid's, sparkly wheel, spinner wheel, that you could technically do a lot of things like create crystals out of laser light and actually like generate hard mass that can be used as it's on its trip. That was one of the things. Let me see here. Let's go back over here.
And transfer their energy, pushing the craft forward. It's basically like wind hitting a sailboat, just with light instead of air. The plan is to keep that laser beam locked on the sail for about 10 minutes straight.
Okay. They're claiming here that in just 10 minutes, they could accelerate it with enough ions to 20% the speed of light.
That constant push would accelerate the tiny spacecraft.
Now that sounds pretty spectacular to me. So, what I was talking about, right, with my, all the pieces keep falling into place. All these videos keep getting made so I can have examples of what I'm talking about. It's great. Just all happening now. So I was describing my North Pole Observatory energy what I always called it in the past. I'll just stick. I can't come up with new terminology. I just always called it a electron telescope. They had electron microscopes, and so I came up with the electron telescope as a kid and talked with tons of people, and this is all infinite research into this. Because the electron telescope is the particle accelerator. It's one and the same, as I've described. And it would generate enough energy off of all of my lightning windmills that are shooting the light data of the lightning as photons, right? As photons. So those photons would get to my main North Pole generator or its secondary generators, and part of that energy could be beamed from the secondary conch light studios on the hills surrounding North Pole Mountain. And it could, they could pinpoint at various angles, like at 10 miles, 20 miles, and then out across the planet, like I was saying. This is about actually getting answers and making connections to different star systems. I'm not messing around here. Nobody is anymore, hopefully, about this. No more lies. So, my giant conch duo-directional system can shoot these lasers up and hit the kites so that they're, you can have more arms than this. You could have, 10 or whatever, however many, and have it all spinning based on a predetermined layout. Now let's see here. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is that, like I always say, you can break the color up into different frequencies so that you can have macro waves hitting it for a period. But see, macro waves are going to need to be in space so that they can compile outside of gas particles from a satellite system in order to increase the amplitude and echo feedback. Like when you put two mics too close together, they're part of the same amplifier system, creates that terrible noise. Well, that's infinite echoing feedback until it's screeching and blowing out everything with magnetism. Well, that's what we're trying to achieve here into forward acceleration. So,
But where should those lasers be located?
So, you could get it layers of these that get smaller and then feed into the other ones and bounce the energy in so that like you have like a blender of spinning arms that are being accelerated continuously faster and faster in no gravity as you get farther away from our star. Little gravity. And let me just pop my back 20 times. So the stacked layers allow for cleverly engineered like I was saying, pressurized gem articulating like accelerated pressure points. So everything it's spinning so fast, you're actually like laser printing out gem material that can be used and spread out systematically around the edges as it goes through space. So that it becomes more and more weighty out of pure light into crystal. And then it accelerates that with mass density and locks in the speed. And then you can do awesome things like you can play off different layers of the spinning, dragon corkscrew, sun wheel, like send the signals from the lasers that are in live contact with it through gravitational level feedback. So that like you're constantly, as it gets farther away, feeding that signal. And you have infinite energy to do this with, and you can experiment, figure it all out with different wavelengths, and so it can become space audio. Like if you listen in the right frequencies, it's just like the stars are all screaming at each other, right? Star Scream, the one of the characters from Transformers. I've made a lot of content around that. Now, let's see here. What else needs to be discussed about this? Well, you could have small clusters of materials that would be inert and seem totally like nothing's going on, that it would be loaded into this so that as it accelerates into its full cognition out away from our star, then... Ooh, a bat just screeched. The fruit bats are out. And the insect bats. I'm so glad we don't have vampire bats around here. Spooky. Okay, so, like, for example, that crystal I described before Chinese scientists got to the moon, so I could show off that I already knew it was going to happen. Kind of like how Danhausen already knew it was going to happen in the NBA. Weird. Wonder where he got that from. So, the concept here is hydrogen-3, for example. Now, if you can start burning hydrogen-3 in my electron particle accelerator telescope array, laser array, and that infinite energy that the sun is using in a live singing connection to the earth as it's floating along in that pressure spout I described in a previous live stream. That's what we're trying to achieve with the satellite, and we should probably think of it more as singing rather than screaming. We should probably be mathematically beautifully musical about this, and we'll probably get farther instead of trying to scream louder than the stars that are angry at each other or whatever their problem is. Okay, so imagine you get up enough energy into batteries that are made out of, because you're in space, it's made out of bouncing light within your whole moving sail system that keeps compounding and adding to this musical algorithm. Like it's a battery of live photons bouncing around. And what are they going to do? They don't got no, impetus and low gravity out there, so they're just going to keep bouncing around. Kind of like if you read the Silverwing series about bats going to the underworld and all of that was written in the 80s. Like I said, things in the 80s were intense for kids. If you listen to the audiobooks or read the books, which I did both of that series, it gets into a lot of heavy spiritual and philosophical and scientific tech. It's incredible. What an incredible series about bats living their lives. And okay, so one of the things from that series is talking about how bats can weave such dense sound nets that they can whisper at such extreme frequencies in the depths of the smoothed out cave hollows under their trees in the mountains in certain spots, in big old trees, that they have like bounce echo story chambers, and they screech in there in different ways, and then it echoes forever, and they go in there like it's one of those silent chambers but in reverse, and they tune around to the different frequencies of voices of bats. It's fascinating, and they can hear the stories from ancient times, like how you can with Native Americans using magnetic signaling, like shamans die and they leave behind their bones, which have their last chosen imprinted message, which can be magnetically read just like a tape. And then it's usually read by another shaman, Native American, and then they speak it into a regular talking box in the 1800s or a modern MP3 now. And then at different burial sites and holy grounds, you can hear stories about ancient times, authentically. So I'm just trying to describe the importance of sound and light and the connection between the two and the magnetism that is all of it. So now I've described before that my electron telescope laser array is also capable of projecting quite a bit of energy. And the attempt here, like I described with the ancient druids and other people, to connect to other star systems and have visions of what the planets look like there through certain herbs you use, or connect to certain stars where there's other humans or whatever on the other planets, and they're connecting back, and you talk to each other using ancient tech. I've done lots of videos on that and convinced everyone of what I was saying, because I said I know more about the layout and the secret earthworks surrounding Stonehenge than the British historians did. So they went in and tested the soil and proved I was correct. Everything I'm saying is correct. So getting back to this topic, you have this big old needle gauge in my snow globe observatory, and it's shooting its main laser at this here, because it wouldn't be a laser, right? The main signal would be an actual like magnetic impetus signal, where it's basically superseding, and it's both a macrowave and a microwave together at the same time, interwoven into what do they call it? Infra something. I can't. Well, there's infrared, of course, but it's like infra rainbow. Now the point is, again, if you listen to the Silverwing series, you've got these bats that can weave sound into shapes, even within the Earth's gravity, within, gas surrounding it. And they use the gas of the air, especially around thunderstorms, and they can shape nets of energy, as it's described that this energy comes from the creator of all matter and organizer. It's very religious as well. It's a crazy series. And so they're able to use the force of sound. It's very interesting. So I wanted to explore that maybe eventually in some Star Wars type themes. But here in the real world, separate from fantasy, even though I learned most of what I know from fantasy books, from fiction, because truth is stranger than fiction, but fiction is often written to hide the truth and present it to those who are wise and seeking it. Just read Young Wizards sometime and really think about everything that's being said in that series. So if you have this needle gauge that can be trained on it initially when this is being projected from Earth and accelerated. Now you can do all kinds of neat things with the initial acceleration. You can have it be at whatever smaller size, and then as it meets different acceleration checkpoints, smoothly over however many seconds or minutes, then it unfurls and spins out to its largest potential size, right? And you can even have temporary assist, jettison packs or whatever, satellite pieces that would begin the journey and then at a certain point run out of juice and detach perfectly, and it would continue on, right? And then these satellites, well, they, because of the torque of the spin, they'd all be shot off in different directions. I don't really know how you'd prevent that. I don't know why it would matter. Anyways, I guess if you don't want to clutter the space with satellites, I don't know. I'm not going to worry about this second. I'm moving along. So now imagine these pinwheels that you're sending. You reach more checkpoints, and you know how they leave behind their big fuel tanks when they're going up into the upper atmosphere? Well, what if you left behind pinwheels and then they further ones are still accelerating somewhat beyond that, as it's like a checkpoint where you burn a bunch of hydrogen 3 or whatever as it reaches certain, acceleration point of mass. What would you call it? Atomic pressure from all different directions in low gravity. And then you can achieve fusion from Earth to this place and then to this spot and through it, and then spinning that color light through to the star you're trying to attach to, and use this as an assist boost for that signal that from the Earth to the next, to that solar system you're reaching to, whatever. Okay, so the whole goal here is that when you think about it, the sun is moving at whatever direction, and the other star you're going towards will be moving at whatever direction differently. So if you launch it at the star, I'm just trying to think this through, because there's certain gravitational principles, like, you throw a frisbee at a certain angle and gas particles will grab it if you tilt it up too much, and it'll go whoosh up and then shoot right back down to the ground right where you're standing, right where you threw it. Like, it's how you can turn a frisbee right into a boomerang. And it's one of the principles that you have to think about when you make a UFO flying saucer, which we already invented. So, man, I'm drinking a lot of coconut water. This isn't a pre-presented topic like a TED Expo. I actually have to, figure out what I'm saying here on the go. Okay, so, you're shooting the lasers. You meet the checkpoints. Fusion. What else was I gonna cover? Oh yeah, the frisbee thing. So if you imagine this as like a boomerang, so if you've played a game like Legend of Zelda and there's lock on with a boomerang or something, so the sun and the Earth is wherever located in the other sun. So those two are gonna change locations. So then the angle is gonna shift at which you can shoot lasers at this thing as it gets farther into deep space. Except if you use the boomerang principle, like I have here, and then you can factor in that gravitational shift of the sun, hopefully here, into the spin, so it's like it's tracking with with adaptions as the laser's hitting it and the spindle angles. Tracking between the two suns, you know, through that gravitational spin of the intense fusion energy laser beams and all that juicy jazz. See, I'm starting to make sense here. You're starting to get what I'm saying. So, if you had, say, 8 of these instead of 5, I was just lazy and I wanted to do less. So, that's the 8 colors of the rainbow. And you could maximally break up the colors of, solar energy from the particle accelerator into all colors of the rainbow, and you have more storage of energy and diffusion of it into crystals and such. What else? I've covered quite a few of the interesting things about it. Let's see here's. I don't know. It seems like I've gotten through quite a few of them, haven't I? But it's been 30 minutes. I thought it's been about 30. It's after 10:30. Starting to feel the first twangs of sleepiness. So my brain, let's see here. I guess I've done a pretty good job describing this now. These different sizes of spinning objects headed for, as each one disconnects, you can do it with an impetus to further the boomerang tracking effect between the two stars with the radio signal live beam, keeping it, on track, on target. So then each piece, as it separates off on its journey, could then create an arc of light as it hits each point, and you can create kind of like a rainbow bridge, you might say, between the two stars with these points of contact. Am I speaking your language? Okay, now that I've described all of that, let's see what else is actually said in this video, because I only watched it to right in here.
Here, on Earth, picture something the size of a massive solar flux, but instead of collecting sunlight, it fires it. The whole structure would include...
Now imagine how little energy that is. It's laughable compared to my system of stripping the excess light from lightning that you don't use for the power grid, and then connecting to other stars the way I described. So you can actually accelerate it infinitely with spin trajectory, like I was saying.
Tons of small, tightly packed lasers, each putting out about 45 watts of power. Just enough to run a small electronic device. Together,
I mean, you might be able to have those, now that I think about it, those jettisons at first. Maybe you could preserve them, I'm trying to think, and use helium H3 or some other crystal of nitrogen or something, and then burn it at a certain point as it picks up momentum and then mass. um, um, because what I was thinking is, these break off pieces would run out of one type of fuel, but then they could shoot out at angles and be like bouncer arrays within first our solar system and then deep space for laser tracking and impetus and angle veracity and acceleration torque, all them good things. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, back to the video.
They combine into one ultra-powerful beam. This system is specifically designed for space-time. It's not meant to be dangerous to people or used for anything military. It's just a completely new way to launch something by skipping fuel and using pure light to do the pushing. At the same time, the energy from the about 100 times stronger than the sunlight on Earth. At that level, it could overheat a bird and damage its eyes. For airplanes and satellites, it could also cause serious heating problems and temporarily blind their sensors. Plus, to pull off something like this, actually reach another star like Alpha Centauri in about 20 years, everything has to be extreme. Not just the...
Well, what they're describing so far doesn't really seem very extreme or cutting edge. I think what I'm saying is beyond it.
Lasers. The spacecraft itself has to be incredibly light. Each part has a limit of about 0.04 ounces. That includes the tiny chip and the light sail that catches the laser beam. For scale, a US penny weighs about 0.088 ounces, so each component has to weigh less than half of a penny. That's basically nothing. And the sail is still huge by micro standards. It needs to be around 109 square feet. So to keep it that light, it has to be unbelievably thin. About 200 nanometers thick. That's roughly 1,000 times thinner than a human hair. At that point, it's less like a sheet and more like a floating film.
A floating film. Very interesting. That's something my brother brought up. So, preserving light data. So if you think of it as film strips, and each sheet is sending the light through from either star or either direction. And film, right, in a dark light room with only deep red pink colors, kind of like the color in space, the eighth color of the rainbow, ultra pink, is perfect environment for film development. And film development can include the growth of crystals.
But with a sail like this, a laser push alone could get a craft to Mars in about 32 hours. That's faster than anything we've ever launched. But building these sails isn't easy. They're fragile, expensive, and slow to produce.
Really? No. Because you don't have it yet mass set up for manufacturing. Yeah, it is. When you've produced the first prototype, it's slow and experimental. Aero-gels weigh nothing. They haven't even discussed that yet.
So, in a 2024 study, a team of scientists tried something different. They used AI to design the sail instead of humans drawing it by hand. Their goal was to make it cheap, fast, and
AI?
scalable. The AI started tweaking
The AI.
structure, adding tiny holes into the sail to control how light bounces off it. These
So I'm guessing the new scheme, like I said, would be implemented is faggots who don't want to admit anybody smarter than them, met infinite of them, they'll just say everything's magical in AI, which AI isn't magic. It's just more hard science of computing without anything magical to it, really. AI doesn't invent everything for you like it's God. So, you should always thank the creator of different tech.
holes help improve reflectivity and make the push from the laser more efficient. At first, the design looked strange. It was like a random cluster of potato-shaped patterns. But then, the team realized it wasn't random at all. The shape actually followed a 200-year-old math pattern called a pentagonal lattice. It's a way of arranging repeating shapes so they fit together tightly without wasting space. That discovery helped them turn a complex and seemingly unsolvable engineering problem into something that can be manufactured really quickly, potentially in
Remember how I invented pickleball over and over again with different styles of play and different rackets, different balls, different materials, etc., etc.? I did all those videos and live streams to prove the fact that I understand physics, particle acceleration, mass, inertia, all of it perfectly within the imagination scape of my mind running simulations.
just one day. Plus, the cost would be significantly lower than before. But even with all this progress, a full-scale Starshot mission is still not ready. Scientists say that most of the hard physics problems are solved, but scaling everything up is the real challenge.
Yeah, scaling it up to my system. That's the real challenge. Because this is like garage science, happening at a university, because then they have to have all of the parts and stuff and do all the things with the special materials. But just feels like garage science. It's not really a super project yet. This is just experimental concepts.
Some labs are already testing parts of the laser system, but launching a real interstellar probe is still far off. For now, researchers are excited about fast travel within our own solar system. Because if a light sail could reach Mars in about a day and a half, that would change everything we can do in space. And maybe
It would.
in the future, we'll also be able to...
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think what you could send very light things like a note that says I love you to Mars in a day and a half. I mean, what's the practical application of that?
to use other ways of super fast space travel that remain hypothetical at the moment, like wormholes. A wormhole is basically a shortcut built
Yeah.
into space.
Uh-huh. I don't know why this is even in this video. I mean, I'm not going to discuss that right now.
Instead of traveling the long way across the universe, you could, in theory, connect two faraway points with a tunnel through space-time. You go in.
Okay, now I'm already pushing the laws of physics of what's possible with what I've described and with what's in budget. So portals. Everybody keeps bringing this up because they swear that druids had portals there where they had their Stonehenge. And I'm not I'm not saying no. I refuse to be that guy. I'm a little skeptical, but then let's look at it scientifically. What if, this concept of multiple Earths, right, as I've described, basically creating the larger string structure of the universe, the key line pi. I don't know. So if there's alternate Earths that are all being a vibrational wavelength of the universe, as they're all an applied living organism entity duplicating from God or whatever other scenario you want to come up with, because that's the truth of what's going on. So, um, the one concept would be that druids were simply drawing together the energy resonance of different versions of planet Earths so that everything lined up good enough that they could step through to an alternate planet somewhere else in the solar system string structure. I mean, not solar system, the interstellar string structure. Another planet vibrating with life with similar continents somewhat. That's another Earth that's doing the same thing. Because, like, everything has to be a two-ended signal that's connecting. Like, if you actually were going to transfer physical matter as if it was light data, it'd have to be through such mass resonance that's already there. This is what I'm trying to describe. That's pretty cool, though. That's pretty cool what I'm describing, isn't it?
In one end and come out somewhere else. Maybe even in another galaxy.
Okay, you got me. I'll describe it. So this concept they always show as though heavenly gate of twisting magnetism is opening into empty space. Now, imagine you were able to project from your star, from the sun, a bolt of plasmoid dark matter light that, because the sun is a black hole, and it could spin off something like this that you could control as part of an attuned frequency with your spaceship. So that then, this is, stargates, right? I keep getting back to this. As the only practical applied physical torque you could imagine that would ever let this happen. Now, the stars would have to be interstellar communicating actively so that their main signals of energy are somewhat pointed towards each other and glittering at each other, and stars are not sending light all directions equally through space. There is a web work. Different stars are doing different things, obviously. They're different colors. They do all different kinds of different things. Have all different kinds of, like, coronal mass events and all kinds of different ways of generating continuous energy at high pressure, temperature, whatever. There's all kinds of things going on. And as I've lived supposedly on this one planet, as it keeps changing around, jumping around to different versions, sometimes people say, "Oh, the sun is a burning ball. It really is." And then other times they say, "No, that was wrong. Nobody talk about that. No, no, no. Now the sun is fusion. Oh, no, no, no. Now it's not. Now it's radiation. No, wait, no, no, no." And they keep changing it. Now it's um laser congestion from mass other stars creating a webwork that's all heat burning invisibly and creating space-time. What if all of it's true at once? Like how religion split everything up. Now, I don't know what else to say about this. I've got your imagination going. Creeping
Imagine
forward.
space as a flat sheet. Bend that sheet and punch 2 holes in different places. Then connect.
No. They're how do you're bending nothing. It's empty space with gravity pushing and pulling from different directions. So you can slip and like intensify different gravity fields. This has been discussed. So you're falling quicker from various gravity fields you're latching onto and then pushing away from others.
Those holes with a tunnel, and you get something like a wormhole, and the tunnel would be the shortcut. The big problem is stability. The math says a wormhole would collapse immediately unless something held it open. That something would likely need exotic forms of energy we've never used or controlled before. Without
Exotic forms of energy we've never. This sounds sexy.
it, the tunnel would just snap shut. Another idea is the Alcubierre warp drive. Instead of cutting through space, it tries to move space itself. A spacecraft would sit inside a bubble. Space in front of it would get squeezed, and space behind it would stretch out.
Okay, that was one thing I forgot to bring up that this just showed off. That has okay. Wow, please load. Okay.
Instead of cutting through space, it tries to move space.
These explosions, okay, builds up the electrical charge, okay. It's like a Star Fox, Star Fox cutscene. Anyways, using 2 different wavelengths of energy and then trying to oscillate between them and invert all the particles of the atomics. All of that is gonna result in destroying everything and killing everyone involved. If it was ever a spaceship with people on it. This is... But the explosions reminded me that my system, my concept, would have at these points these events of like disconnect between different segments of the solar fan. It would have points where it would meet at planned moments, you know, the required amount of torque and laser energy bouncing around and from a fusion reactor on Earth, and then it would now I think this would work farther out into, you know, maybe the edge of our solar system, at least within the rules of our energy of our solar system. I think this would function. So you'd have to have accelerated by the time you're exiting our outer stretches of the larger sun's energy extent shell, which is very large, reasonably so, and has more rings beyond what people think it does. But now, one other thing I wanted to bring up about this. They say that Pluto, right, is angled at 13-degree tilt compared to the axis that all of our planets are on, our plane of existence around the sun. And that got me thinking, right? It's yanking on Neptune in a pattern where it's mathematically locked with Neptune perfectly. And Neptune, right, tuning of the spheres. So that would indicate that plutonium, is off-kilter radiation, electron, not electron, what would you call it? Heavy proton. It's not called a proton. Heavy protons are called something else, but wow, I don't even remember. Um, okay. Let's see here.
Space in front of it.
Just that you would have a event where you'd have like a champagne cork steady pressure increase to separate out the next piece. Not really an explosion, maybe, because that would be destructive, but just an infinite sudden acceleration of one piece away from, or one piece accelerating the rest of everything as it's charged enough to push the rest of it forward in a reaction as it's, basically bouncing the momentum, if you think about it that way, from Earth. Which makes me think you could have the array, you could have a stacked number of arrays, one right after another, and then they could reach a point of meshing in space, and then that connection point would complete a circuit and have enough energy activate the burning of whatever, and then voila, further acceleration and spin. Ow, my brain hurts. Oh, ouch, my skull's growing. Whew.
Get squeezed, and space behind it would stretch out. The ship wouldn't technically move locally. It would get carried by space shifting around. From the outside, it could look like faster than light travel, even though the ship would never break the normal speed limit inside its own bubble. This idea comes from Einstein's equations, but it also needs something we don't know how to create: negative energy, or exotic matter.
We don't know how to create it? Well, that's an interesting topic. Today, I reached the point where I was healing enough and evolved enough that I could actually feel from various people the different sections of their brain, negative to positive, and how they're interacting at different charged angles, like the polar patterns of the Earth. So when someone's bipolar, they fluctuate, between extreme anger and extreme happiness or whatever. So everybody's somewhat bipolar because everything isn't arranged perfectly in their brains, and those duality of signals somewhat exist. And so then everybody, in order to not be bipolar, they're supposed to have a cowlick spin on one side of their head, and their entire second bipolar sphere of their brain is supposed to twist in the other side and spin into the cowlick and be locked and enslaved so that your heart is on the left side of your chest and enslaving the electrical system to pump and squeeze and twist everything till you die into a little twist on your head, a little point. Inevitably of cancer, of starving particles across your skull because everything's twisting inevitably into the subatomics.
Then there are even more speculative concepts.
So, negative energy within people's brains exist, and they've actually shaped it. I haven't, but most other people have, like a radio signal to be evil. Eves, right? Eves of light. And illness of those eves, of those angles of light being affected by dark matter. And that's why everybody wants bad screaming energy from dark space, not even from stars. The stars are screaming to be heard over the death of older universes of bad energy that are in no way useful and are toxic, that everybody's trying to figure out how to get addicted to and make bacteria eat them alive while they pretend it's all hunky-dory. So, like, strawberry plants pick up large amounts of starlight into the strawberries, and it's a safe way to melt down the excess of white sugar in people and prevent the bipolar accelerated death of those sugar 90-degree spins, angles, from accelerating that cowlick spin of death into everybody further. And of course, everybody's mass of doing that all on the planet, billions of people, trillions of spirits across all time space of the planet, they are torturing the planet and hence the star. Anyways, black light, if you go into one of those energy spas like I did, I generated and melted down all of the radio frequencies of dirty energy of everybody's thoughts, all combining and sharing Eve ills. Now, it is interesting because if you think of it like you use a microphone mesh, but this is instead the sound itself is the microphone mesh and the black light material, and that it reflects into color at an inverse wavelength. Hence, it's spinning, conch spinning outwards against the direction of whatever the magnetic torque impetus is. So, like in the northern hemisphere, it's counterclockwise, so it'd be going clockwise. This is what shapes, like I said, ammonite conches with a little bit of black lava crystal, whatever that's called. The problem is everybody wants to think of negative energy as an absence of energy instead of just energy in a different quantifiable structure of bearing, like how hydrogen can be super thin helium gas, or it can be a crystal that's, a sapphire, or it can be frozen ice, or it can keep doing different things because it's nebulous star energy from our star that's keeping this planet alive. So our star is also further developed into being a black hole to survive what humans have done to everything. It's become a zombie star, right? So now it's putting out hot black light, starting to pump that into the disk of our record groove scratching of our planets and of around us and our Earth. So, like, it's a perfect disguise in space. If you look at black hole stars, you can't see them from a distance. There's nothing to see. Light is being distorted, and gas from different larger areas of space and the vast areas around it is being warped by its inverse mass. And when this happens, here's the fascinating part. You can use this inverse gravity to slingshot away from the center solenoid of your star in various ways. Now, it'd be pretty hard to see a whole ton of different stars in space, no matter how close or far away from our star, if there's no signal connection between the two, and it just looks like more of nothing is there. Invisibility cloak. It'd be pretty hard to know how many stars are actually there if they're on other inverse wavelengths that we just can't pick up with any sensors, as we're stuck in this star's record scratch area.
Or exotic matter. Then there are even...
Then you become Superman and you use... and you fly to the other star. I don't know.
more speculative concepts. Anti-reality drives directly distort or remove space between 2 points, so the distance...
So is anybody getting creeped out? This is really creepy. I'm getting goosebumps. This is bad energy.
with different...
Ghost echoes of uranium death, scattered inverse light from various versions of Earth, all trying at different angles to create an AI algorithm of perpetual thought as a mass consciousness of death to drag us all down. How lovely.
rules and reappear far away in an instant. Right now, all of these ideas sit at the edge of physics. The equations don't fully forbid them, but the conditions are beyond anything we can...
I just gotta say, my hair is so much better than Einstein's. Holy cow. And, sure, he might have one of those silly mustaches that I'll probably never grow. But I'm fine with that. I'll just have fabulous hair.